Hello again. Now we're going to take a look at another widely used smartphone camera, the one on the Samsung Galaxy S6 and all the S6 Edge variants. First, like with the iPhone, we'll take a look at settings found in the operating system, and then we'll take a look at the settings in the standard camera app. Let's turn to the operating system settings. Go to the standard camera app and choose Settings icon. Looks like a little gear. The first thing you encounter is picture size. This is for the rear camera, the one that is like a normal camera. It's not the selfie camera. And by default, this is set already to their maximum 16.9 megapixels to be precise. The next setting is video size, and this is not set to the maximum by default. And you have to tap the panel to change to UHD, which is ultra high definition. And this can affect images because when you choose this, it turns off HDR as an option. And as you'll see in some of the panels later in the example, HDR will not show up. The next setting is tracking AF for autofocus. This also pertains to video. And in this, the focus follows the selected focus object even when it's in motion and keeps the object in focus as it moves. And there's another side effect to this too, which is that you can't have image stabilization turned on at the same time as this setting. The next setting is video stabilization, which compensates for slight jerks and shakes and random movements. Then we have grid lines. This is like the grid setting on the iPhone. It turns on a grid dividing the screen into vertical and horizontal thirds and helps you compose shots according to the rule of thirds if you want to use that. And even if you don't, it still helps you determine whether things are straight horizontal or straight vertical. Location tags. These are on by default, and they capture data from the geographic location of a shot and save text information about the shot. Quick launch voice control. This allows the photographer to use voice commands like cheese or smile or shoot and so on to trigger the taking of a photograph. It also works with video, so if you say start video as a voice command, it will start the video recording. The next setting is volume control. It's fairly obvious. It controls loudness. And then there are the volume keys, which you can assign to various kinds of functions. Shutter sound is the next one, which when it's turned on, imitates the camera's shutter sound of a film camera, so you get the click sound that happens in older cameras. There's another setting which is interesting, which is that you can take a still shot in the middle of a recording of a video just by pressing the shutter button. This is only on the Galaxy. Now we can move from the options that can be set in the operating system settings panel to the options found in the standard default camera app. There are 8 of these options. Samsung calls them modes. So the first one is auto, and this covers all the default settings and settings that allow you to use the camera in more or less automatic mode. The second is called Pro mode. We're going to save that for a little bit. The next one is selective focus mode. This is for photographs and allows you to choose between what they call near focus and far focus or pan. And this has some relationship to the way you focus a DSLR camera. So when you choose far focus, you get the foreground blurry and the background sharp. When you choose near focus, you get the reverse, where the foreground is in focus, but the background is blurry. And pan is when you have more or less everything completely in focus. The next mode is panorama mode. This is similar to the panoramic mode on the iPhone. You start the photograph shooting on the left and move to the right, or on the Samsung, unlike the iPhone, you can actually start on the right and move to the left. The next setting is a slow motion setting. This is for video, and the one that follows it is a fast motion mode. That also is for video. And then we have a virtual shot mode. This is another kind of panorama, but it's different from the panoramic photograph that we talked about before. It results in a kind of photograph that you can rotate 360 degrees. These kinds of files, by the way, are only viewable on a Samsung device. The final mode is called download, and actually is a mode in which you can download from a website other kinds of shooting modes that are available, some of them made available by Samsung and some made available by users. So now we'll take a look at the options. These apply to all images created with the camera, not just a selected image. In other words, this is not a single effect, it's a kind of global setting. And the first is, like the iPhone, something that you use in almost every mode, and it's focus. And to establish focus, you tap and establish a focal point. If you want to separate the exposure area from the focus area, you tap and hold. And you'll see the AF/AE icon, which stands for autofocus and auto exposure. And if you drag on that so the ring separates into two, you can set the two independently. The next setting is exposure compensation. That changes the default exposure from -1 through +1, which moves from brightest to darkest or the other way around, and it affects everything. The ISO setting, like on the iPhone, affects the sensor's sensitivity to light, goes from either auto, where the camera chooses the appropriate ISO setting, or through a range that starts with 100, 200, and goes on, etc. White balance, like the iPhone, is partitioned into various kinds of preset categories. You have auto, standard, manual, daylight, incandescent, and so forth. Next, you have selective focus, which is similar to what I said before, and this is either on manual or auto and covers a range from macro through near to far. The final category, themes, allows you to change themes. They have names like vivid, nostalgic, soft, serene, standard, preset, etc. These are analogous to various kinds of post-processing effects, and you choose them before shooting the image. And there are small icons that demonstrate the effect that this theme will have if chosen before you shoot the image. So within the camera mode, there are 5 options on the top bar that appear: settings, flash, timer, metering, and effects. Flash is fairly obvious. It's either auto, which means the camera chooses when to use flash and when not, or it's on or off. The timer allows you to set how long it will be after pressing the shutter before the picture actually is taken. Metering modes, center weighted, matrix, and spot have to do with how the camera chooses which area of the picture to adjust light to. Effects is similar to themes, but in this case there's an effects preset palette which can be applied. This is by default set to no effect, and the other ones can be chosen, and if you then want to go back to the normal mode, you choose no effect. There's also, if you haven't eliminated it by choosing options that get rid of it, a live view HDR mode. This allows the user to check the result in real time on the preview screen, and it also has an auto mode which optimizes light. Then there are some settings that pertain to the front camera only, the camera facing the photographer, the so-called selfie camera. And these modes are selfie, which is a normal selfie, and wide selfie, which is where you can tilt the camera slightly to the left and then return to the center and tilt it slightly to the right and get a kind of wide angle selfie that includes a larger area of the image in the final result. There's also an interval shot, which is basically selfies that are taken at various time intervals that you can control in various ways. And in this camera, you also have the real-time HDR mode, which allows you to take HDR through the camera that faces the photographer instead of the camera facing the subject. Now that we've dealt with 2 widely used smartphone cameras and how to set them up and prepare for taking photographs, let's turn to some essential accessories that will help you take consistently